So yeah, Jamie, you were saying that there's probably some big differences in recruiting between CNU and Brandeis, huh?
Yeah, I would imagine. I mean, again, we don't really when I'm talking with recruits, Brandeis doesn't really pop up on the radar for us all that often. We are a state institution, so primarily if you look at our roster, that's in-state kids is kind of what we go after, and we hit Virginia really hard. We do have 5 out-of-state kids in this incoming class out of our 9, so it's kind of that year was a little abnormal, but it kind of just worked out that way. And then looking ahead at 24s, all of our commits now are Virginia State kids. It's just 2 parts to it: in-state tuition, a little bit easier on the financial side of things, and then there's really good soccer in Virginia, so it makes my job a little bit easier. So
So he always has issues with.
I'm gonna just turn it off. Sorry, I should have done that earlier. Unprofessional of me, my bad. But yeah, I can imagine. I mean, we don't. I mean, again, down here, Emory is kind of the one we run into. I guess the most, because I mean they're kind of the closest proximity to us in that respect.
Yeah, I think there's like 2 parts. For us, we're a private institution, and being a part of the UAA, we play 8 schools, and we're all located in 8 different cities, and so there's quite a bit of travel, and I think might get some exposure through that, and we kind of catch the eyes of some players in those cities that we play. But I would say, yeah, we tend to recruit about half our roster is nationally based, getting kids from California, Texas, Florida, Ohio, all parts of the US. And then I'd say the other half is pretty local. There's a lot of great soccer up here in New England, and so we try to tap into that. But I think being a private school, we have to kind of extend ourselves a little bit in different parts of the country. And, I think being a part of the UAA helps with that. And, trying to get our name out there and tap into little parts of the country that know about Brandeis and want a high education in the New England area.
Yeah. So Mary, maybe tell the audience, for those of us who don't know, what the UAA is.
So the University Athletic Association is a Division III conference, and it's based around 8 elite academic schools in 8 different cities. So you've got schools in Chicago, WashU in St. Louis, University of Rochester, Case Western in Cleveland, Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh, Emory, which Jamie mentioned, down in Atlanta, NYU, and hopefully I'm not leaving anybody out, just going through the list of schools. And then we have ourselves Brandeis up here just outside of Boston, but really, really cool conference to be a part of. We get to travel to, 3 of those schools, and then the other 4 will come to us this fall. So excited about the travel piece. I think that's kind of what separates us from other Division III conferences. But it's got its pros, it's got its cons, and you got to find the kids or the young women that are interested in that type of travel and getting themselves out there like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jamie.
Yeah, I mean, our conference is kind of like the UAA, but not really, because we're in the coast to coast. So we have teams all across the country, but we don't actually play them until a conference tournament. So the UAA decided to use their AQ in that way, which I think is really awesome, where you actually do get to see those teams and travel to those areas, see different parts of the country, every year. And I wanted to ask you, Mary, about that, like with the travel piece, and like how do your kids kind of manage that workload? Because I would imagine it's pretty difficult getting on a plane, every other weekend or whatever it may be, with that.
Yeah, a lot of planning, Jamie.
Yeah.
And I think
I
that
can imagine.
I think that planning starts like back in the spring with registering for their classes and making sure that, they're picking classes that are balanced course load. And I think here at Brandeis, we're really lucky. Our faculty and staff are very supportive of our players traveling. And then our athletic director also, provides a letter to our students that they give to their professors, letting them know that there's some missed class days. So we kind of jump ahead of things and make sure that their professors are aware of which days they're missing and, what work they might need to catch up on. There's a lot of planning around like proctoring exams and quizzes. And so we really have to stay on top of things. And our players do a really great job of that. I think I'm pretty fortunate that they're pretty driven and take care of most of that on their own. Do we run into a few conflicts? Yes. But our athletics department and our faculty and staff work pretty closely to manage those conflicts. But it's challenging, but it's manageable. And that's just something that we do talk about in the recruiting process. Is we have to be organized with our schedule and when we're leaving, when we're coming back. I will say, the travel is amazing because you get to, Jamie, I'm sure you've seen this with your players when they're on the plane or when they're in the airport. There's these genuine connections that happen and that you don't always have when they're just on campus living their day-to-day lives. So that piece is really cool. But then on the flip side of that, there's also getting back from a trip really late at night and, having to go to class the next morning. So it's a lot of conversations about, taking care of ourselves, being smart, planning ahead and being smart about our schedules.
Yeah, I love the traveling because it's
cool.
just you and the team. It's just like there's so many connections or deeper connections being made. So we try to travel somewhere a little further every year.
Yeah.
So we're going up to Columbus this year. So
nice. Who you guys got? Who are you playing out of
Capital and Ohio Northern?
Nice.
So yeah, it should be a great weekend. We've been down to San Antonio in Texas, gone down to Emory, been to Chicago, went out to Santa Cruz a couple years ago. So been up to New York once. So we try to again show a different part of the country to the team. And again, I think like you mentioned, travel with the team it's huge because they're all together and it's just them and they get to kind of do their own little thing.
And then from the coaching standpoint too, they get to see the other side of Mary, or not the other side, but another side of Mary, where it's she's a human being who travels too. It's just fun to get to see them in a different environment. And like you said, different cities, different, places, different food. It opens their eyes to other opportunities and places to be.
Get to see with the neck pillow, and everything.
Yeah. I don't bring them on those trips, but I try to keep my cool,
Yeah. So real quick, introduce you guys. So today we have back Jamie Gunderson, who is the head women's coach at Christopher Newport University down in Newport News, Virginia. Been there. How long have you been there now, Jamie? Assistant.
This is actually my 12th season, which is crazy to think about.
Wow.
So yeah, it's crazy. I was just talking with my mom the other day about this.
Yeah.
Time flies.
Yeah, for sure. Yes. Tell me about it. And then we also have Mary Shimko, who is the head women's coach at Brandeis University, like she set up near Boston. And you are also a graduate of Brandeis, correct?
Yeah, I'm an alum of the program, and so feeling like I'm at home here.
Yeah, so maybe talk about your recruiting story, and you're still on the younger side of, well, me for sure, Jamie as well, but so it's more recent, and talk about what it was like to choose Brandeis and what that whole deal.
Yeah, I'm getting up there, you guys. Don't let me tell you.
I know.
It's been a while. No, so I, grew up Cleveland, Ohio. Had some family living on the East Coast. Knew I wanted to, go to a high academic school. Wanted to play soccer, and wanted to be near some family out here. And wasn't sure what level, but I was open to all levels of playing Division 1, 2, and 3. And I actually went to a camp out at, I think it was at Deerfield Academy. It was like a Nike ID camp where a bunch of college coaches were there, and had the opportunity to play in front of the assistant at the time, connected really well with her, and was learning a little bit about Brandeis through my time at camp. And after the camp, she said, "Hey, Mary, we'd love to set up a visit for you." And I had been up in this area before, visiting schools and campuses, and hadn't been to Brandeis. So after the camp was over, came back in the fall and did an unofficial visit and just met the team, attended a class, met with the coaching staff, and the location was awesome. The academics were a great fit. The conference was really cool, an awesome concept to me. It was like a mix between both Division 1 and Division 3, and so that was a really attractive piece for me. And then I met the team, and I always say, like, people will ask me, "Mary, like, what made you choose Brandeis?" And it was a little moment for me. Like, after the visit, my mom and I just kind of walked around campus, just continued to explore, and got lost. And like, we clearly did not know where to go. And I was like, "Oh my God, this is so embarrassing." And 2 players on the team actually like noticed that we were like nowhere near our car. And they just like came up to my mom and I and walked us both down to the field. And for me, that like the conversations we had on the way down to the car, and like just their perspective of the school and just how they treated us, I was like, these are the type of people I want to be around. So, it hit all of those pieces where academics, location, like just people, it was all of the things just kind of came together, and I knew that's where I wanted to be. And the people have been what's brought me back here and have kept me here. It's a really special place in my eyes. I'm a little biased, but I really, really enjoy this environment.
Yeah. So okay, that makes sense. I was going to say, so how did you end up, settling on Brandeis? But it sounds like they kind of settled it for you by just, being great to you and all that.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I had a ton of conversations with the coaches, and, I think they were really clear about the process at the time. Denise was she wound up being here for 40 years. And so I knew she was a legendary coach, and wanted to make things happen here. So the soccer piece was huge as well. And when I had come for my visit, and after the visit was over, they had said, "Hey, academically you're a fit. If you apply early decision, would you be willing to commit?" And, I said, "Absolutely." So I applied early decision, and that was the end of it. But I had been looking at other schools, just nothing really felt quite right like it did here at Brandeis.
So maybe talk about like the cultural fit, and obviously it's a unique place. I mean, there's high academic standards, and you have a large geographic conference that you have to make sure that the athletes that you bring in there can check all those boxes of being able to handle the workload, handle the athletic piece of it. It's not easy being away all the time. It definitely can wear on you. So maybe talk about evaluating that, and finding the right kids to be in your program.
Yeah, and I think I learned at a young age, and while I was going through my own recruiting experience here at Brandeis, was that, like, yes, the talent matters, but just as importantly, the character matters as well, and making sure that you're bringing in the right people, not just the right players. So I learned that at a young age from Denise, and have carried that through. I think in terms of like evaluating players and seeing if they can, fit our program, I still spend a lot of time on the human component piece, the character piece. But I think in terms of like the balancing, the soccer, the academics, the travel, the club world these days, like, these kids are traveling all over the country, almost like every other weekend. And sometimes I'm like, how do they do it? Like once they get to college, like their lives are going to be so much easier. Some of these kids are missing weeks of school throughout the year. So, my perspective is, if you're able to manage that club schedule and you're still doing well in all of your classes in high school, you're taking a challenging course load, you're playing competitive teams throughout the country, that when you get here to Brandeis, at the end of your school day, you're walking down to practice. You're not driving an hour and a half to club, and you're here, you're on campus, you have the resources, you have the support. Yes, there's that tough travel on the weekends. But I think that the players and the people that we bring in, we're really clear about that travel and that, that commitment that it takes. And, usually they're pretty used to it based on what's going on in this club world and that we're currently dealing with.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe you guys can get into that a little bit, how much it's changed in the club world and, kind of pros and cons and that sort of thing. I don't know if that's really a question, just kind of something to talk about.
There are a ton of pros to it, I think. I mean, with the club world, and you maybe are getting better matchups with players and putting them in more competitive environments. As Mary was saying, it's like we go through the same process with the recruiting. It's like they're going through those hard days, long hours, and they're still getting good grades. I mean, they're gonna be okay. Like they're figuring it out already. They don't realize they may be doing those things right now, but it's gonna prepare them for the next steps. I don't have a better solution for the club world, but here we are. And so, like for us as coaches and recruiting, that's the dynamic we're put in, and for the environment that we're put in. So we just figure out a way to utilize it. Yeah, I mean, the travel piece again, that does prepare them for the next steps, because college, there again, especially UAA, or you go to a school that does have a lot of travel, you're going to have to be used to studying in a car or in a bus, or when you're in an airport waiting for your layover, are you utilizing that time, and how are you managing it? Does come into play. So I know the club is kind of nationwide now, or national scene. It does a lot of good things for the student athlete, because again, they're going to be doing that the next steps in college, depending on where they go, kind of thing.
I'm trying to think of some cons, and I think Jamie touched on a lot of the positives, and I think positives probably outweigh the cons. But the club world, they're playing games usually back to back, and like they're not getting the recovery, they're not getting the probably the extra support that maybe we have here at the college level, whether that's nutritionists, like mental health counselors, things that can help support our students along the way, because it is stressful to be pushing yourself academically, athletically. So hopefully they get to this college level, and they're playing for programs that have some support for them to help manage all of the things that they're trying to balance. But yeah, the club world it has its pros, it has its cons.
Right.
I could go deeper, but I won't go too deep.
Well, I don't know why you wouldn't. I mean, that's I don't know. It's it just seems, for me, I guess it's I don't know. What do I know? Never mind. I'll keep my opinion to myself. But I guess the big problem is that we have a giant country that we're trying to.
That makes it a really challenging aspect to
the
it.
The geographics is the big problem.
Yeah. 100%.
Mary, you mentioned mental health, which I think is an important topic. It's a a current topic, and maybe talk about you have young women student athletes that are coming. You said from all over the country. Freshmen might be a little homesick, and maybe they get there, and if you go to a school like Brandeis or Christopher Newport, they're high achievers. They've done well up to this point in their lives, and how are they being coached to cope I guess, with, not being the best player, or maybe getting a B, or, or something like that, where they're having to deal with a setback, and maybe talk about in college how that works and what resources there are and that sort of thing.
Yeah. I think that the landscape of college coaching has been changing and to some extent has to change. We're dealing with student athletes, technically I was doing a coaching course and someone mentioned that this is one of the loneliest generations that we're coaching right now, because of technology, because of the pandemic and what they've experienced. And so I think the coaches have had to shift the way they coach, how they coach, their perspectives. And so I think it's, making sure that we're approaching our players and our programs with a holistic approach, meaning, we're not just looking at them as an X and an O, but as a person with a lot of passion, hard work, dedication. They're high achievers, like you said. So I think, we as coaches have to do a better job of getting to know our athletes, figuring out what their needs are, what makes them tick, what helps them, what hurts them. So I think that's a huge part of what we do here to try and support them. And, understanding that, like, hey, they're going to be homesick and we have to be there to support them. So, one thing that we're very fortunate here at Brandeis, we have a community therapist that works with our program and works with all of our programs. And so just a resource that's in our athletic department that, people can, meet with individually, or we can have her work with our team collectively. So, really tapping into what the school has to offer is really important to me. And like I said, getting to know the student athletes on a more individual level and figuring out how they are coming in and what to expect coming in, and, figure out how to support them, while they're making that big transition. And I think simply like just understanding as well, like understanding that they're, sleeping in a new bed, eating new food, surrounded by new people. I think coaches have to do a better job of understanding who these people are and what they're going through, especially after what they've already been through as high school students and grown up with.
Yeah. Jamie, you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, it's a challenge, right? Like when you get into the next level, the pond becomes smaller and smaller, the pool becomes smaller and smaller. So you're putting the best kids from your club team in this other environment. So I agree with Mary that again, it's a lot of relationships, informing those relationships with your players just to know how they tick and what motivates them, what drives them, how they handle the adversity, and how do you manage that part of it. So for me, like I have an open door policy, completely open. Anybody can come in and talk about anything with me and my assistant Sean. But I usually start the meetings off with, "How's your day? How was classes? How's your family? Like, how's your brother or sister? Like, things like that. How's your dog or something? Like those simple things." So they start to get, it's not just like you need to do this on the field. It's I have this connection with them and I know a little bit more about them, and then they start to feel a little bit more comfortable. So then when things maybe do get a little bit tougher and they're struggling a little bit more, they are comfortable enough to come share that with me, because I think that's a big component in it, is that when people are struggling, they need an outlet. Otherwise, it's just going to boil up and eat at them. And you can tell, like, you can read people and it's like something's not right until they share. Then you can really dissect it or point it in the right direction of a counselor or a sports psychologist, or maybe it is going to see the doctor that we have on campus, whatever it may be. Yeah, I mean, that I think Mary hit it on the head. It's not just a transactional environment now. It's evolving into more of again, relationships and connections with the addition of soccer. So I think that it is changing, and it's just managing it a little bit different. You can still, there's a balance to it for sure, because you still have to have those expectations and standards, because Mary's really competitive. I'm really competitive. Like, we want to win. Like, that's why we're doing this. And we're at great universities that have the resources and the environment that sets you up to do that. So, we're not just pumping the brakes just to put off, like, to stop from doing what we want to do as a program. But there is a balance to it. And I think comes with just caring and understanding and supportive, almost in love too. So I think I agree with what Mary said.
Yeah. I guess, Mary, when you have a student athlete in your office and they're a recruit, how are you identifying the characteristics that you think will be successful, within someone that indicates they'll be successful at Brandeis and within your program? Again, because it's multifaceted for sure there. It's there's so much to overcome to be successful at Brandeis.
Yeah, that's a really good question. There's certain questions I like to ask. Why do you want to play college soccer? I think, that's an important question to ask. And sometimes you learn a lot about a player by their response. Some, want to do it just because they want to say they play college soccer. The others, want to continue this like competitive drive. And I think there are certain things that I try to listen to when they respond to that question or respond to the questions that I ask. I watch how they interact with their family when they're on their visit. I think that's a huge part of that. Of that visit and figuring out how they, communicate or, their body language. I really look at those little things to see, what is it going to be like when, it's just the player and myself and I'm that person delivering them the harder news or something that might challenge them, and how will they respond. And so I look at those types of characteristics. I pay attention to the questions they ask and how much research they've done about our program and the university. I also try to see if I have a connection with them. Yes, I want to bring in really talented players, but if I can't connect with the player and I don't feel like they understand what we're about here, then that makes me question if they'll be the right fit. So there's a lot of things throughout their time on campus that I pay attention to. And I also recognize they're 16 to 17-year-olds, and they're not going to be perfect, and they're gonna, lean on their parents a little bit, and that they might say some things that they, might not want to have said, but so I try to see them as human beings and that they're not perfect, but I also do pay attention to some of the other things that I could see proposing an issue down the line. If that makes sense. Does that make sense? I don't know if I'm
Absolutely.
rambling here.
No, I agree with that.
Yeah.
I like when a recruit sits in my office. I honestly, some have in a notepad what questions they want to ask. I'd rather have that than them say, I don't have any questions.
Right.
So it's just you've done your homework on us. It also gives me a little bit more of who you are as a person too. You really care about this.
Yeah.
And you're in this and you want to do this versus again, I have a lot of recruits come on campus. We have visits and I sit down and we're like, okay, well, here's campus. What do you think? And it's just a mute, or they don't know what to say, which is fine. But then you go, well, what questions do you have? And then it's I don't have any questions. Have something, just something simple, and then we can build off of that. But I'm with you. It's there has to be some sort of feeling to it from both ends. And again, the little things you mentioned, seeing how they react with their parents and talk with them, it's huge. Are they on their phone the entire time or whatever? That kills me. Yeah. It's enjoy this experience because a lot of people don't get it, and some may take advantage of it, kind of thing. So,
Jamie, how do you Scott, is it okay if I ask some questions?
Absolutely not. No, of course.
No, Jamie, how do you feel about having parents be a part of the meeting? Because I think I've shifted in that kind of realm
I'm okay with it. I think early on for sure, so they can hear like the good, like what we talk about and what CNU's about, so they can kind of get an understanding of it. I do, I do have some. There's been parents, and you've probably had this too, that they're they're asking all the questions,
Yeah.
and I'm like, it's not your process,
Yeah.
like let your daughter handle this, and you can help them, but try to take a step back. I know you're doing it out of like love, but you're not coming to play soccer for me, unfortunately. It's like it's your daughter that's coming to play for me. So I have them in my meetings. I see like both sides of it of not having them and just having the daughter there. But yeah, so that way maybe the daughter doesn't get overwhelmed with just information, because it is those visits, and I'm sure with your visits are, if you're having somebody from California or from Texas come to your campus, you're having an extensive day with a lot of information, where with us, Virginia, we can have them down 2 or 3 times before they actually get an offer and commit, kind of thing. So they
Yeah.
may hear that information a couple times.
It's a good
So
point.
I can see both sides to it for sure. I really like having my players meet with the kids, or with the recruits, and have them go to lunch or stay the night with them. And then my players come back and it's like, I didn't really like her, or they really loved her. Like
Yeah.
that really hits home with me, because if they are like, I don't know about this one, it's like then I have to do more homework to make sure if it is a right fit, or maybe they're pretty spot on, which is great, because I think we've built this culture to where it is now that it's in a really good place. So I really trust them. Whereas, maybe when we first got here, it's like we're trying to form this culture and trying to build it to what it is. And now, again, 12th season in, it is what we want it to be. And so I really value and trust my players too. In that.
I feel the same. And you brought up a good point about like usually like when they come to campus from across the country, it's that one time that they're coming. So that's a really good point. But yeah, I've been starting to lean more towards having the parents involved, just because it is it is a stressful process. Like that's why we're doing this call today. So having a little bit of extra support, and I think you do get to see those little moments of how they respond to their parents. Are they rolling their eyes? Are they like telling
Laughing
them
at
to
them or
stop
something.
talking? Yeah, like I think you learn a lot about a player through those little you know uncomfortable moments. So it's been a shift in kind of my process and experience. But I love what you said about having your players involved and trusting them. I think they have such a good pulse of what the program needs in terms of moving forward. So they've been a big part of my process and moving forward with players.
Yeah, I mean, both of you guys have like a strong culture within your programs. I mean, Mary, you came on the tail of, you're the second coach at Brandeis, right? Isn't that, I
Yeah.
think I read that. I mean, so talk about a culture. I mean, obviously you're going to do some things based off of your personality, but a lot of it is from a strong 40-year-old culture that you're building on. And Jamie, I mean, you've won a national championship. You've got a culture there. So, I mean, it's all about identifying young women who are a fit for that. You need everybody rowing in the same direction, I guess. But I would go back to the meetings where there are parents present and kids, and like Mary, you said something that triggered something for me, where kids they're scared to not be perfect.
Hmm.
And when they're sitting there with a coach who has something, a say in their future, they don't want to make mistakes, they don't want to not be perfect. And I wonder what your guys' take is on being imperfect and making mistakes, and being, Jamie, we've talked about this, being vulnerable, and not and being okay with screwing up a little bit, even in front of people who hold their future in their in their hands.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I mean, maybe just talk about how it's okay I think it's probably okay with both of you to make some mistakes here and there.
Yeah. No, I think it's something we talk a lot about, and especially throughout the recruiting process and with our current team, is that it's okay to not be perfect. And that's not what our culture is about. Our culture is about improving 1% every day in anything that we do, whether that's on the field, in the classroom, in the community. And what I like about that statement is that you don't have to show up and be perfect every day. You just have to show up with the mentality of just getting a little bit better. And you only get better by making mistakes. We only learn. And like Jamie, I'm sure you can speak a lot more to this. Like, when you're trying to win a national championship, you got to learn from your failures. You got to learn from your mistakes. And if you're not doing that, like I don't think you get to that point. So that's something we really try to emphasize, and same thing in the process. Like one of the first conversations I have with recruits is, hey, you played well. Like there's no such thing as a perfect game. These are the things you did well. These are the things I could see you doing better. And we're not chasing perfection here. We're chasing the mentality to just get better every day. And so that's kind of how I start the process, and try to continue that throughout their 4 years here at Brandeis. But it is really hard to ingrain that into student athletes. Like I we can say it, and I can say it every day, but it doesn't mean that it's going to happen overnight. So we still have plenty of players who are really hard on themselves because they aren't the perfect student, the perfect player, the perfect person. And so it's just trying to in our roles, figure out how we can say that that's okay. And I think one way I try to do that is by showing, them I'm a real human and that I make mistakes. Like, when I'm typing out an email, like I make mistakes, when I'm coaching a session and maybe it wasn't as perfectly as I wanted it to be. I try to show them, hey, like that, I'm not perfect. There are things that could have been better in that section. And I promise tomorrow that'll be different. And so, just showing them that we're humans, we make mistakes, but it's hard, man. Like it is hard to show them you don't have to be perfect in everything that you do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's what I preach as well. Is again, I talk about the reaction to a mistake a lot, and I'm curious to see when a mistake happens, how does a player respond to that mistake? Because that's a tell sign of who they are. Like if they lose lose the ball or make a bad pass, or if an attacker tries to move and it doesn't work, do they just stop? Do they recover? Those kind of things is what I always preach to the team. And it's just like, you're gonna make, like you said, the only way you're gonna learn is if you make mistakes, and that's being uncomfortable and doing something that's gonna be hard. But when you make those decisions to be that, you're gonna be really hard to stop once you start to perfect those moments. But yeah, so I mean, again, I make mistakes all the time. My team grills me if I misspell a word or something in the group me. They hate when I put a period in the group me. Like when I'm texting or something, they're like, "Why'd you put the period?" Like it's stuff like that. So it's funny. They just call out smaller things. Like they know that something happened, and I just own up to it. It's like, yeah, like I made a mistake, and so it's showing them again that we're not perfect either. I think is really in that we're like a human. Things happen. So, kind of having an even field with them, and I think is a really good thing.
Yeah, I would say don't let one mistake turn into two mistakes. Like Jamie, I like what you said about body language. Like, you're gonna make a mistake in the game. Like you're gonna make a missed pass or miss a goal scoring opportunity, but don't let one mistake turn into two mistakes. Like dropping your head would be that second mistake, right? Like, and then your opponent gets by you and beats you. Like that's where I try to step in and say, hey, that's where we can grow as a human. We can grow as a person, is not letting those imperfect moments, disrupt you as a player and as a person.
Yeah, I love the saying, playing with pride. It's like if you make a mistake, don't, like you said, don't let it turn into two mistakes. And I don't know where I heard that. It might have actually been Brendan Rodgers, but where I first heard it. But I hate to admit that. But yeah, I mean, I think it's such a good way, just a good attitude of
Yeah.
kind of that transcends into other parts of your life as well. So, yeah, let's talk a little bit about parents. Mary, I'm interested in your take on, you talked about how it sounded like there was a phase where you didn't really want parents within meetings. You really wanted to connect with the player. What made you kind of rethink that? And, what are your thoughts on the parent's role in the process?
Yeah, I would say that like really shifted about it like a year or so ago for me. Like noticing the little moments in the meetings with parents, I felt like it did show a lot for me, and it was a helpful kind of way to assess character and um, in those moments. But I did this coaching course with United Soccer coaches, and they brought in somebody who talked about the involvement of parents and how it does help the process, and it provides those players support, and then also allows us to see those interactions. And also allows us to ask them some questions. And for me, that shifted things. I have started to ask some parents some questions. And one of my favorite questions to ask is, what do you want this, experience to look like for your daughter, if she were to come play play here, or, what are you looking for in an experience for your daughter? And I feel like asking them those questions and hearing that response is so impactful, because if they're responding with, hey, I want my kid to go out and step on that field and play 90 minutes, like that might not be the best fit, right? Because I don't promise starting spots, I don't promise playing time in the recruiting process. Everything is earned. And so just hearing some parents respond with like, I just want my daughter to be happy. I just want them to enjoy, get a good education, enjoy, playing the game that they love, and getting the ability to compete. Like those things for me, like those stand out. And, when I hear a response like that, I usually know, hey, the kid has, experienced some good values in their life. I don't base my sole recruiting process on the parent player interaction. Don't get me wrong. Like it's not like the most important piece, but I think it's a part of the piece, or part of the pie that can help a little bit predict what the future entails for this athlete. And I would say 9 times out of 10, like parents usually do respond in such a great way. Like, hey, I want my daughter to be a part of a program where she's going to be supported and cared for, and like our values align. And I think like that for me is like, wow, I'm recruiting a kid who, has some really great parents, and our values are going to align in that piece. And then I get to ask that same question to the player and hear their perspective. And so I think having that kind of contrast, and having them hear what their parents say, having the parent hear what their kids say, like I don't know if they've ever had that conversation before. So that's why I like having the parents involved. I will say sometimes, the reason why I asked Jamie is because, when the parent does continue to talk and doesn't let their kid take over the process, I struggle with those uncomfortable moments, being like, hey, am I going to learn about the kid? Am I going to hear the kid? Am I going to hear this perspective? And sometimes I don't. And that's the challenge where I experience that struggle.
Yeah, it's hard as a parent to kind of. I learned that I was scared. Like I was scared to let my kid, I have 2 kids, but specifically in this process, like navigate on his own. And I realized, fortunately for him and for our relationship, that it's important. It's so important to just let them, manage it. And if they have questions, that's when you get involved, is when they have questions and may need a little help. But it's so important for them to grow up in that situation. So
But not every kid does. Not every kid has a healthy, parental like parents that have a healthy relationship, or have a healthy relationship with their parents. So like I think it's hard, like, and that's why I say it's only a part of the puzzle, not like a major piece of the puzzle. Because I think it is hard, and I think some kids don't know how to navigate this process, and it's hard. And having a parent there is like, it's so important because they can help them navigate that a bit. So it's like it's a double-edged sword. Sometimes it's amazing to have a parent there. Sometimes it's like I just want to hear what they have to say.
Yeah. And, the role of a parent should, I guess, for me anyway, primarily would be to be a cheerleader and to, be that comfort and love spot rather than, they have so much soccer elsewhere in their lives that it's just a matter of being a comfort zone for them. So, Jamie, you have anything to add?
No, I think that PK's covered that. I mean, I always, when I have a recruit in my office, especially if it's their first kind of visit kind of thing that they're going through, I always try to just give a little advice to them with the process to try to make them a little bit more comfortable with it, because it is a big decision in their life. Probably the biggest, and I don't want to put more stress on the fact of it, but it probably is the biggest decision they had to make in their life going forward now, is where they're going to go for the next 4 years. And so, I try to, again, answer any questions about the recruiting process they may have, because it might be the first time they've gone through it. It may be their first, daughter going through this process, and the parent has no idea. I know each kind of clubs may have a college director to help, but sometimes they need more. And I try to navigate that as best I can with them. And so just some parents ask, what do I need to be asking? What do we need to be doing? And most of the time they're in the right place. They're asking the right questions. They're doing the right things, but it's just an unknown kind of thing. So that I think, again, having the parent in that too helps just to, set them at ease a little bit, and even the recruit too, to be like, you're doing the right things. You've had a phone call, like you're now like starting to narrow your list down to whatever it is, and you're going to visit your schools. You're doing the right things. And so that's kind of how I try to help navigate that, because we probably hit recruits pretty early in that respect, just because of the nature of the Virginia schools. And again, our pool is a little bit smaller, so we can kind of start the process kind of a little bit earlier than maybe a typical timeline. But so sometimes we do have recruits on campus that it is their first ever visit to a school and being sitting in a room with the coach. So that happens pretty frequently here.
Mary, when you were talking about going through your recruiting process, you talked about your visit at Brandeis, and it seemed like there was kind of a moment where you realized you were in the right spot. When the two players came and talked to you and your mom. And do you think that most kids, it's probably not the right way to ask, but do you think that everyone can get to that moment, or how do they kind of, I don't know that there's a right answer to this, so I'm just kind of throwing this out there. Can everybody have that kind of moment in their recruiting process? Because, we've talked a ton about the transfer portal on here, and how there's student athletes who end up in that because they made not quite the right decision initially. So do you think that there's a moment that they should keep looking for? If they're talking to Jamie for 6 months and they've never really had that moment, maybe they're just looking for something different. And you see what I'm getting at?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I think with my process, I guess my answer to that would be, I don't think you have to have this special moment. And that moment for me was, I think, a culmination of everything kind of being like, all right, this just makes sense to me. Mm-hmm. Because it hit the program, the university, the location, it hit all of the things that were important to me. And so I think as long as it, checks the boxes that are most important to you, then you can find the right fit. I don't necessarily think you have to have this huge aha moment, but as you build a relationship with a program, a university, a coaching staff, you start to create a culmination of all these things, and you're like, yeah, this is getting to the point where, yeah, I can feel like I can be successful here. So if Jamie has a player that doesn't have that aha moment, but knows that the school offers the right major, that it fits their family's budget, that it's in the right part of the country that they want to go to school in, and that socially they connect with people on campus, like those are the things that are stable and are going to maintain the same. And then you add the coaching piece and the soccer piece to it. You have then you have a recipe of, hey, this can really work for me, right? Like I connect with Jamie, we can build a relationship with each other. I might not have an aha moment, but I know that all of these things check off my box, and that I have somebody that I can play for that can help me improve as not only a player but a person. Then I think you've found a good home. I think we keep saying it's a stressful process. So, and they're 18 years old, like it's a big decision. So I think if you're trying to wait for that aha moment, you might miss out on something really great. So, I don't know if that answers your question, Scott, but I think, yes, the aha moment's important, but also making sure that, the school and the program checks off all of those boxes, so that if soccer wasn't there, like, someone always says, like, the broken leg test, like, that you can still be happy there, right? And so I think that's what's most important in this process, not so much, hey, this is it felt right in my gut that this is the place I should be, because your gut can change that, your things can change, a team can change, a staff can change. So you really want to make sure that it hits all of the components and meets not only your family needs, but your needs as well.
Yeah. Jamie?
For sure. I mean, I'm echoing what Mary's saying. I say to recruits, say you have 10 boxes to check in your list. If it checks 9, I mean, that's pretty good. I mean, again, I don't know if you're going to have that aha moment all the time or leave the place, but you're going to leave a place kind of knowing, like, I can see myself there. And do you see yourself there without playing a sport? You may not, if you're playing soccer, it's without playing soccer. So, that's kind of what I kind of preach to.
Yeah. Yeah. It's remarkable that every conversation I've had on this podcast, every coach has said, pass the broken leg test, like you said. I mean, no one leads with make sure the soccer's right. Everyone talks about make sure that the college is right. It checks all the boxes for you. And that requires some homework on the front end, right? So that you know that if you want to be an engineer, I don't think Christopher Newport has engineering.
We have computer engineering and electrical engineering master programs, but if you're an engineer, not the place for you. If you want to be a nurse, not the best fit for you. So,
right. So know that going in, right?
Yes.
Yeah. It's huge. That's a huge part of your decision-making process. What else, guys? What else can we can kind of tap into here? Anything? What about going into preseason? So when do you guys start? Is it tomorrow?
I start Thursday. We start
Thursday.
Yeah.
Our players move in on Friday, and then first session is Saturday morning. So,
is that a school thing or UA kind of thing? When is your first match?
Our first match is September 1. So it's not a UAA that's like our start date from Brandeis. So
okay. Do you start class that Monday
we start class the 31st. So we've got some time before they head back.
Gotcha.
We're doing our first ever preseason trip. So
cool.
We're going up to Vermont for 4 days, which we've never done as a team, and just gonna go up to, it's like a ski resort, and just train on the grass and play some soccer, maybe do a little hiking, not sure yet. Go to a water park, have some fun, enjoy being a team, and being being off campus together as a group, I think could be really cool for us to kick off the season.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I've seen that more and more. Like, saw a team, Hood College, the men's team. They went to Costa Rica preseason. I was like, wow, that's kind of cool. I want to do that.
An international trip would be the dream. I think that what a cool experience to take your players like to a different country, experience new cultures. But
did that I think 6 years ago.
You did a preseason trip, or
yeah,
did you spring
preseason?
Yeah.
Right
how was it, Jamie?
It was great. It was a challenge, to be honest, at the end, because me and the head coach at the time were really competitive. We wanted to be soccer. I think if I were to do another one, it would be a little bit like lighter on the soccer, more about the experience and just doing more activities with the team that are not soccer related. Because when we got back, there was like 2 or 3 days, or gosh, I can't remember. Maybe it was almost a week before we started preseason. So they were like kind of exhausted from the trip. Didn't do much for that week, and then we start preseason. Then we hit the ground. It was just, in theory, it seems like a good idea, but for me, after going through it and seeing how the team reacted to it, yeah, I would change a little bit of like how much soccer we actually did. It was awesome. We went to a Celtics match. We saw West Brom play Portsmouth. It was good times.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you guys still get, like, at what point does like the summer end for you guys, and you like get really excited about kids being back on campus, and your preseason starting, and that first kick of the ball, so to speak, when the kids are back and your season's rolling?
Yeah. Well, I just got married, so I would say right after my honeymoon is like right when I was back into it. I did like make sure I disconnected and enjoyed that part of my life for a bit. But I would say like beginning of August, like I actually just texted my captains today. I was like, it is too quiet on campus. Like the anticipation and like just like there's like this quiet like before the storm, and I'm just like, I'm ready for it to get going. So I'd say like the first week of August, as you see like the D1 schools get back to it, you're like, all right, I'm ready. Let's get this ball rolling. Let's have some fun. So, but still have some planning to do. So I'm like, all right, I like that we have like a couple of extra weeks to get after it. But I will say like seeing those folks get into it, I'm like, all right, I'm ready.
Yeah, for sure. Jamie, you were coaching all summer, weren't you?
Yeah, it was awesome because we made it we went to the national championship, so it was cool. I coached for a USL2 team.
Jamie.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Congrats. That's huge.
I just recently retired playing. I got forced in retirement, I guess. So I've been coaching with the team. So I played with them. This is the 5th year it's been established. So the first 3 years I played, and then coached the last 2 seasons, and then played out in Seattle. And that was right at the beginning of, or end of July, early August. So I was doing that basically the entire summer. So I didn't get too much of a break, but that's part of it. It was awesome. We ended up losing, unfortunately, but great season. So yeah.
Jamie played for so long, he played with my son for a little bit.
Yes.
No way, Jamie. I didn't know you played that long. Like, that's wild. I didn't know you still played. Which USL team are you coaching?
It's called Lionsbridge.
Okay.
Yeah, it's based out of Newport. I mean, it was a perfect setup. So, like, I've known Scott for, too many years now. I actually coached his son when he was growing up in club, and that's how we got connected. And then Augie, who his son plays at William Mary, he played, was it 2 years ago or last year?
Yeah, I think
it was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Or no, 2 years ago when I was still kind of playing. So I got to play with Augie, which was kind of cool. It was like full circle. I'm like, you were 10 when I was coaching you, and now I'm playing with you.
Yeah.
But no, it's fun. It just was a perfect setup because the house I live in is like I could walk to the training field. We play at CNU, so it just made sense. And my other buddy who coached at ODU was involved, and so he was like, "Do you want to be involved in this?" So and it's just been unbelievable of how much it's grown in the 5 years of it being established, in the community that, I mean, we get over 2,000 fans per game. It's insane. So it's pretty cool to see what it's done.
Our men's coach, Gabe Margolis, coaches a USL team up here, and he was telling me the same thing, just like the turnout. And I see some things on social media. It's incredible how many fans that you guys get to those games, and I think it's an awesome league to have during the summer, and great summer prep, and like
For sure.
it's really, I think it's really great for the game. I'm like, Gabe, next summer I gotta get, I want to tap into that, and it's a great way to like stay fresh in your coaching too.
Yeah, no, and that's with us too. Like, again, you get 15 days for a string in one game.
Yeah.
You lose touch. You lose touch
how
with
do I
coaching
challenge
itself.
myself as a coach and show up and show what I've learned in this off season to help.
Right. So it helps with that 100%, and that's why I love doing it, because you get different people coming in to help coach with the team, different players, and sometimes they're like really good Division I players, so it's like, okay, pushing you to really nitpick their game a little bit to improve them to get better, or forming a session or an activity or whatever it may be. So it does keep me on my toes and keeps me busy, which is great, because now I'm like kind of in the flow of it, ready to roll for for the season.
Yeah.
What do they have? What's the equivalent for the women's game? Where do college women go to play during the summer and all that?
It's a couple of different leagues. There's the W League that is still around, but I don't know how big it is. It's kind of spotty in areas. There's a WPSL as well. I think that's the one Danny played. My sister plays as well, still, in Columbus, out of Columbus. So she coaches at Muskegon University in Ohio.
I was like, I know that last name. I think I know. Yeah,
she was at Denison for a long time.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense now. All right.
Yeah, so that's my sister.
Okay, small world. Wow.
Yeah. But other than that, a lot of the club teams around here, at least, are doing Pro 23s, and so they'll have a women's side for that as well.
Gotcha. And I believe that, like, on the USL is starting some more teams on the women's side as well. We don't have any up here in Massachusetts. I believe there's one in like Connecticut, but there's several leagues that you can play in.
Good.
Yeah.
All right. We're right at an hour. You guys have anything else?
Just thank you guys. Like, I really appreciated this conversation. I know, Scott, you had mentioned something on the 28th or the 24th? It was like a Sunday evening. I'm busy, but I'd be happy to jump on like other calls like this. This is awesome.
Okay. Yeah, we'd love having you. You're a great guest, which is always, it's like sometimes I have to drag it out of Jamie, but, I didn't have to do that.
I don't talk very much, man. You know me by now.
I like chatting with you guys. I like this format, pretty laid back, like, and Jamie, I've like never met you, and I've always like wanted to say hi, so I'm glad this brought us together.
It's great to meet you, and again, if you need anything, don't hesitate to reach out. So happy to help us.
I expect to see a CNU Brandeis match in the next few years.
That'd be a fun match to get together. That'd be a tough one.
It would be good.
I like that. I'll keep it. Jamie, maybe we'll touch base.
Yeah, for sure.
All right.
Yep. Thank you so much, Mary. All right. Good luck this season. All right. See you. Bye.